Hi, I'm Holly, and I'm the primary teacher and author here at Study with Friends. My education is from a Reformed theological seminary, so you'll see that come through as we teach and study together. But on occasion, I'll introduce concepts from other doctrines when I think they shed light on the material, just so that we can have a well-rounded understanding of lots of different perspectives on the text. We strongly believe that you should know and understand who's teaching you the Bible. And so you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. We're just really glad you're here.
So we're going to move on to the Passover. We're coming on to the last couple of days. We're moving on to, I think it's Thursday. And I love this first miracle he does. So this is where he tells his disciples to go find a man with a water jug and tell him that we're going to go have the Passover in his house. And so this is so small and it's so impactful for me. I'm now just a lover of Jesus's miracles because, again, intellectually I learned and I thought, okay, that'll make sense. And now I see all these subtle miracles that you would go, how on earth would he know which guy is holding a pitcher of water? And he says to the guys, go out and look for a man with a pitcher of water. And so in saying that, what it means to me, what is that small miracle? Because that's the one that opened up to me. That's the one that really stood out to me. What does that small miracle mean to you guys? Did it look like a miracle when you read it, or did you pass it by?
I did. I passed it by. I did.
Yeah. And I think that's normal.
Me too. I think it's
Yeah.
normal too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just a description of how we are in our everyday life, though. Like, how many small miracles do we miss on a daily basis, and dismiss them as they're not miracles? Mm-hmm. It just is what's happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're looking for something bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, you were
That's
right.
the point.
What we're calling miracles.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So he says to them, go find this place and we're going to go up and we are going to take the Passover. How do you guys see the interaction? So he tells all the disciples where to go. And so what do you see? Is there anything else that you saw in the interaction where he tells them, in the story of where he tells them where to go? Did you guys see anything in that? It's all right if we don't. We can read John. Fatima, do I have you reading John 13, 1 through 20?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus knew, knowing the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments and, taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter and said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, What am I doing? You do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, You shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, The one who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not every one of you. For he knew who was to betray him, and that was why he said, Not all of you are clean. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I am telling you this now before it takes place, that when it does take place, you may believe that I am he. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me.
That was John 13, 1 through 20. Thank you, Fatima. So just in that reading, one really vague question, what stood out to you? This is a big section. A lot's
Yeah.
going on.
Truly, truly, he is a servant. He has come to be a servant.
And how does he show that in a really practical way?
Yeah, by cleaning feet, because they wore sandals, and so their feet were always dirty.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he got down on his hands and knees and served.
Yeah, he took off his linens, right? He wrapped a towel around his waist, which was the towel that he then used to wipe their feet. So this was like, he was a true physical servant in front of them. And then he says to you, to us, let this be by example to you.
Example.
Right. So humility is huge, right? We know that humility is one of the things that he looks for. It's one of the things that I know I've said on a recording before, we can't strive for, right? We can't go, I'm going to be the best humble person, right? Like that's, it obviously negates itself. So in what ways can we be humble? Very literally, in what ways can we be humble? What ways in the past have you recognized maybe that you've lacked humility, or that this was a circumstance in which you were able to be humble? So two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
I think you're able to see your humility, whether it's there or not, in retrospect,
Yeah.
as opposed to like in the moment. Because people have come to me and said things and said, oh, you were so humble to do this. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. I was doing what needed to be done at the moment. And oftentimes it's those most caring things. And I wouldn't describe myself to be the most caring and giving. So I'm like, but this is what was needed of me in that moment. And so I did that. Wasn't humbling, I guess so. But it's just what needed to occur.
I could think of a time, well, times plural, actually, if I tell the truth, where I wasn't so humble. And again, you realize it afterwards. When I look at some of the things that I allowed to offend me. And later you look back at it and realize, what were you getting so excited about, Jan? That wasn't even about you. That wasn't about you. They offended you because of what was going on in them, but you took it as a dagger to your heart. So in doing that, you've thought too much of yourself. You didn't see it for what was really going on. So that's when, and I'm glad that he provokes me to look back and critique myself. So you look back and you say, I need some humbling.
Yeah. Forced humility is harder than given humility, I think.
Yeah.
For me, I recognize that in myself, whereas when I'm forced into a situation where I look wrong, defeated, last place, right? Those areas are harder for me than the ones where I go, oh no, I'd be happy to serve you. Sometimes in my home, I'm happy to serve, right? I want to serve people. I want to clean up after those people and those things. And those might look humble on the surface, but maybe they're not so humble. Whereas if I'm forced into a losing position, even a losing argument, I have trouble losing an argument.
I was gonna say what Jan was saying. When someone offends you, I was thinking, well, the actions of the mouth, like those offensive situations, that's where it's hard to be humble for me, at least. But I think that's a reflection of like the heart again. It's like those are prideful situations, whereas physical actions of servitude are much easier to be humble in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that for you because you're not able to do that for yourself right now. That's easy. But to take some words in that may not be so kind are really hard or to put me in my place.
Yeah.
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 So it brings me back to work again and paying attention to people who are humble at work. And it's interesting how, at the end of the day, you're getting ready to go, and just to walk around and say, hey, do you need anything? Can I do anything for you? Like, we have a couple people who do that, and it's really nice, and it's really humbling that they are taking the time when, other people are like, oh, time's up, I'm out, see you later. And, they could be there for another hour taking care of something. And it's interesting to watch people who are humble, who are servants. It's a servant leadership. And I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, yep, I'm done. I'm out. And then sometimes, I will, because I've seen it, then I will, okay, let me start doing that if I have some time and if I have the heart for it. But I don't always have the heart for it. So,
And that's what he's asking, right? There's no gain to ourselves in doing, like he gets no gain from washing their feet. He gets no prize. He gets, he doesn't get anything from it. And he's still not just willing to do it, but it's important for him to do it so they can learn it. And so, I would think that even thinking, right, the people who work late overtime, which I'm like, check, as soon as that minute is up and I'm ready to go and I'm looking for the next thing to do. And so staying and just helping somebody else at no gain to yourselves is beautiful. That's such a great thing.
It is.
That you can see in other people. And it's a great example that he sends to us. And so this picture, again, these reminders of this week, he just shows us exactly what he wants from him. He shows us what he wants us to do in order to worship him. Going back to, this is a worshiping moment that when we serve others, we're showing them what it looks like to be Christ. And we can't go wrong with that.
No. Mm-hmm.
Only in our inner sinful nature does that feel wrong. Right? That sin is going like, no.
No, you're no, you're good too. You're too good for that.
Yes.
No, you're too good for that.
Yeah. You're too good for that. I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so in this, then he does he performs the Passover. He performs communion, excuse me. So where he says, this is my body, eat this bread and think of me. And this is my blood, and drink this and think of me. And so when you take communion, I know communion is different for all of us. Each church celebrates it differently. It looks different. What does this communion mean to you? How do you celebrate it, and what does it mean to you? How do you celebrate communion, Jan?
The same way with you have the little wafer and take the bread and the juice and the wine. And right before, we're always reminded to make peace with whomever you need to make peace with in your heart before you commune. So when I take it, I just am reminded loudly of what was done for me.
Yeah, I love that reflection process. Just going inward and just, getting settled and having that peace.
Yeah, the reflective piece is really important. Our church did something, the reflective piece, a little bit different this past month, which I really enjoyed. Not just reflecting for ourselves, but seeing it as an opportunity to reflect and be in relationship with one another. We were asked to sit with someone whom we did not know and then pray with them. And I thought, wow, it was really meaningful to just come sit alongside a stranger and go to the Lord for their heart and their needs. And I thought, that,
Did you pray out loud with them?
Yes.
Wow. So that's even humbling of itself, because that's a difficult thing to pray out loud for somebody.
We've done that before. I mean, years ago. But you're right. It's humbling, and it's humbling for the person you partner with, for them to bear themselves to you, and tell you, this is what I need you to pray about. And then there's this whole you becoming them.
Yes.
You become them, and you pray. That's
You
real
share
nice.
their burden, which was what the Lord really wants us to do, is
Yeah.
to share others' burdens.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great way to celebrate communion. I've never heard that before, so that's really great.
It was the first time I've ever done it, and I thought,
Yeah.
this is the best communion I've ever had. Because it really wasn't, all about me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to do many of the things that he asks us to do. You get to love on others. You get to remain in humility in some ways. You get to be in prayer. I mean, that's great. That's a nice way to do it. Speaking of prayer, he goes to prayer after this. So after they celebrate the Passover, he brings his 12. Actually, he brings his 11 because Judas has left.
Yeah.
And so he brings his 11 to the garden. And then he takes 3 with him, Peter, James, and John. And then he goes to pray. And we see he prays not once, but multiple times, which means, obviously, this is really important. Prayer is being in communion with his Father is imperative to him. And I think, again, we can take that as another really good example. So first, if there's anything that hits you about him being in the garden, and then after that, I want to talk about prayer. So before we talk about prayer, what hits you about him being in the garden? Any of the actions that he might take?
I think there were a couple of things that stood out to me. While he did take others with him, he still felt alone. So, which is, we know what that feels like, or I should say, Jesus knows what we feel like when we feel alone. And I thought, that really stood out to me, that in the moments where we feel the most alone, it doesn't mean physically we're alone.
Yeah.
Or even relationally.
And he was alone because he had to handle this all on his own.
Yeah.
This was him. He couldn't, the disciples weren't helping him with it. This was something he had to do for all of us. And he was going to be separated from the Father, which would be a devastating, horrible thing, which we obviously we'll go into, but yeah, he was alone. And so, he had to handle that way. Thanks. Anybody else? How important is prayer in your life?
Where would I be? If you didn't.
Yeah. It's your connection.
Yeah, where would?
Sure.
It's literally the only thing that makes any sense. Like when everything else is spinning, it's the only thing that makes sense. Why wouldn't you talk to your Creator? Why wouldn't you? Even though I was that girl that didn't. I mean,
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you always this way?
No, I was not that.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was, how's that poem go? I'm the captain of my ship. And
I'm the master, my fate, and all that. Yeah.
I don't know that one. What's that poem?
I don't know the title, but it's like, I'm the master of my fate, you're over your own destiny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Invictus, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Something, I don't know.
It's been a long time since I read it.
That's what I thought. I actually believe that junk.
Yeah.
And, I know it's junk now, but once that was settled, then you have to pray. To get your instructions, to get everything, And when you study, you're always led to prayer. When you learn something, or when you see something, you love the way the Lord reveals himself in so many different ways. And, so prayer, first of all, I think prayer takes a lot of forms. I think Maya Angelou said, thank you is a prayer. So it takes a lot of forms, right? Or you can look at something and say, no, that's good. And you didn't do it. So,
Amy, how about you?
So I have a couple of things to say about that.
Yeah.
So I guess I've been a Christian for a long time, but I called myself a Christian, but I didn't have that relationship. And so I remember hearing about someone say, when you pray, don't just throw everything on God. and then walk away. And I feel like oftentimes I did that. I would just, okay, here's everything. Thanks. Have a good day. And I remember hearing, do you go to the doctor and do you say, well, this hurts and that hurts and that? Thank you so much. That was great. And walk out before you get, your instructions or your diagnosis or whatever. And I would often do it that way. Okay, here it is. Like, it was my job just to do that and then take nothing in and not hear the other side of it. So I think that was always a learning process to me, to learn exactly how to pray and how to just sit and listen and be a part of that. The other thing I wanted to say is that thinking about Jesus going into the garden to pray, I went to Israel a couple of years ago, and it's not a garden like we make a garden of flowers or of vegetables or, anything like that. It's not necessarily a garden like that. It had trees in it, fig trees. And what they have now, which may or may not be the same spot, is a very small area that they say this is the garden. And there's trees in there that are hundreds of years old, not thousands. So they weren't around when Jesus was there, but probably the same thing. And so it's interesting to me because when they were talking about going to the garden, I would think of this, lavender field or of, something so beautiful, but it was more desolate, more tree-like. And so it's very interesting to me to put more of a visual into what he's going through. And, when he says, take this cup from me, I can't do this. And he listens.
Right. And that's even interesting too, what he says. It's not just that he communes with God, but what he says. He says, take this cup from me.
Yeah.
So we know as a human, which I love the both human and God dichotomy of him. As a human, this is going to be really hard. And he doesn't want to have to go through it. And even in a way, he's fearful of it, right? So it's so difficult. And so even showing us over and over again, because he goes back and then he comes and then he goes back and he prays and then he comes back to the disciples and then he goes back and prays again. And even in that, he hears him and yet he goes back and he still asks to be released from the cup, that it's just going to be really hard. And I love that compassion in him as a human. I just love it. I love to see it. I love to see what he's going through, that it's not easy, that he's not some, superhero that can just stand there and take it. And it just gets me closer to him as a person more than just this intangible pie in the sky thing up in heaven, right? He shows us, and again, that's why he came, right? It's one of the reasons why he came as a human, was he says, I'm like you. I understand you. I sympathize with you. And so I love that.
Yeah. And being
and forth.
God, he could have, all of the things that everything, the curtain was torn and the earthquake that got the guys out of the jail during, in Acts. And he could have done all of this, but he stayed in his humanness, which is over the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
And in this teacher mode, because it's not like he just said, these are the instructions and go and do it. Like, these are the rules. It was like he modeled it. It's hard, and I'm going to keep going back in prayer because it is so hard. I'm not capable. And that's what the relationship with God is supposed to look like in good and in bad circumstances.
Right.
Keep coming back to God to talk to him about whatever the circumstances are.
Right. That's so good. Yes.
Yeah. He didn't just go in and okay, I feel equipped. And then you get out there in reality. It's I'm not so sure. Oh, well, it's okay to come back and say, all right, I'm not sure I really have this, God. I really need the Spirit to lead me and kind of push me through.
Right. And it gives
Forcefully.
us the understanding that the same can be done for us. Yeah. It can be done for us. When these hard times come, he's going to be right there with us. Yeah. He's going to walk us through it. And he's still going to ask for those hard things from us. He's still going to ask us to do hard things the hard, bad things are going to happen.
Yep.
And, you know, there's no miracle cure when we become Christians, which I absolutely thought there was. And I remember saying there wasn't, because I came from a really very smart church. And so I knew to say the right things. Like, no, it's going to be hard. But I really thought it was going to be easy. Like in my mind, and it started easy.
Yeah.
Like all these good things came from it, and it started really easily. And then real life sunk in, and, you know, the other shoe
Yes.
dropped, so to speak. And real life is real life.
Yeah.
As a human, we're just not going to live in this picture perfect world.
Yeah.
In-
And
until
he
it moves-
shows us over and over again
Right.
that he's going to be there in the fire
Yep.
in the lion's den. He's going to be there
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah. And he is our strength. He is our companion. He is everything to us. And
Yeah.
so,
And the prayer reminds us of that. Like,
Right.
So it's not that we're just going out and like and putting down our burdens, like you said,
Right.
and then
Right.
walking away. It's that it also equips us to go through it and reminds us that he's there with us.